talking about an interesting subject that I have never talked about today, and I'm kind of excited about it. And you can see it in your bulletin this morning. The other criminal, or the other thief. Now, if you have a Bible, we've often talked about this guy being the thief on the cross, and there were two of them, and we usually talk about the quote unquote the good thief. He's the good thief. He was the nice guy on the cross. The Bible actually doesn't really say thief, but it does say criminal, and it does say that he was some sort of convict. Not really sure what he did, but there were two of them, and we usually talk about the good one. And today, I'd really like to talk about the bad thief, the bad criminal today, because he never gets any time. You know, we always preach about the other guy. We never preach about the bad guy. So today, just for fun, I want to preach about the bad guy. But I think there's something important there, because when we get up to the cross and we worshiped and we celebrated what Jesus did on the cross and how He rose from the grave, we did a lot of that last week in church, and that was just Resurrection Sunday. Easter Sunday is just one of my favorite Sundays. It really is. It's my favorite Sunday of all. And it's always a great time to talk about what Jesus did on the cross and how Jesus rose from the grave. But when we go back to that, it's a pretty bad scene when Jesus is walking to the cross, because people are mocking Him, and they're spitting on Him, and they're making fun of Him. I don't know if anybody in here has ever had to grow up in high school and had anybody make fun of you before. Did that ever happen to anybody? Anybody that, just raise your hand if that ever happened, okay? Happened to me too. Yeah, I understand. And it is one of the great joys in life to get on Facebook as you get into your middle ages and as you get a little bit farther. One of the great joys in life is to be able to see some of the bullies and some of the really popular kids in high school, and to see how incredibly normal they look now. And it's even kind of fun, because you look on Facebook sometimes, and I know that folks who have been bullied, I know this has to cross your mind every now and then. You look online and you see that picture of those older, we're all older now. They're looking so much more normal than they used to, and you look at them and you go, I could take them. The playing field's evened out a little bit now, I mean, but if you've ever remembered how difficult that was when you were in school and you did get picked on, if that was ever you, and it's been me, I've been there, I understand. It was just that times 1,000 as Jesus was going to the cross, because everybody, the whole city, was making fun of Him. It seemed like, by the way that it's written. It said that the people who passed by were yelling insults at Him. It said that the chief priests and the scribes and all the religious leaders, and they had turned out to see this, that they were all making fun of Him. And even the two guys He was crucified next to, the Bible says they were making fun of Him as well. That's what Matthew said. The criminals were making fun of Him. Mark said the same thing. The two criminals were making fun of Him. And I don't know if that's just kind of what it looked like to Mark and Matthew, because most of the time they make you stand back when they're crucifying somebody. They don't let you get up there close. They're working. You have to stay back. And so they didn't let the crowds get too close to the people who were being crucified. And so they had to stay back. So maybe that's just what it looked like if you were Mark or if you were Matthew, and so you wrote it down that the criminals were doing that. Or maybe they both started out making fun of Jesus. Maybe they both started out that way. Or it might have been that the people who got to be closer to the cross, people like Jesus' mom, Mary, who it sure appears that Luke must have talked to her. Because when Luke wrote his gospel, there's some details in Luke that you just wonder, he had to have gotten that from Mary. That's just too much. The stuff she was thinking about, the stuff that she felt. When you read Luke, you read a lot about stuff that Mary thought about and that Mary felt. And so you really have the idea that he must have talked to Mary. And if he talked to Mary, she got to be a lot closer to the cross when Jesus was crucified. And so she might have been able to hear some details that everybody else didn't hear, because when you get to Luke, what you find out is that there's one of the criminals that's really making fun of him, and the other guy tells him to shut up. And there's that interaction and that famous scene where the criminal, the good criminal, looks at Jesus and he says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom," where he He asked for a little bit of mercy. And so we preach sermons about that guy. But what about the bad criminal? What about the one that was making fun of him? What about what he said? What about his situation? I always thought he was kind of the dumbest guy in the world. I'm like, you're going to die in an hour. You're making fun of the Son of God. Really? And I always thought that was crazy. But the truth is, he just didn't believe it. He just didn't believe it was true. It's a little like we feel sometimes when we want to ask a psychic why they haven't made a fortune gambling. I mean, if you're a psychic, you should know where to put the ball where to bet. You should know what's going to happen. We want to do that because we don't really believe it. It's like asking someone who claims that they can heal people miraculously. We ask them, why don't you go to the hospital? There's a whole bunch of people that could use it there. It's because we're a little bit skeptical of claims like that. And so I can imagine that the criminal on the cross, the bad one, was skeptical. Sure sounds like that. Because one of the criminals hanging there began to yell insults at him. And here's what he said: "Aren't you the Messiah?" It'd be like us saying, "Aren't you psychic? Aren't you some healer? Why don't you go to the hospital and heal everybody? Why don't you bet on a football game if you're a psychic and you know who's going to win?" We would ask those kinds of questions. And he said, "Aren't you the Messiah? Then save yourself and us. Save yourself and us. Prove it. I mean, if you're really who you say you are, come down off the cross. Oh, and save us too." I've often thought about what he said. And I want to propose to you something today that I think is really important for us to think about. I think he would have believed in Jesus if Jesus would have come off the cross and then saved him too. I think he would have believed. That's all Jesus had to do. Prove it and save him too. And if Jesus would just make his life better, if Jesus would just give him what he wanted, he was willing, I think, to believe in Jesus if Jesus would really do those things. And so I'm going to use a couple of words that that we don't normally use, and they sound a little big, and I didn't really get this from anywhere. I thought of this and kind of invented it on my own a little bit, so I apologize. But to me, this strikes me as transactional faith. I'm going to believe in you as long as you can give me something, because what I'm really wanting is something from God. What I'm really wanting is something from Jesus, and I'm willing to believe if I can get that answer to prayer. I'm willing to believe if He'll give me what I want. I'm willing to believe if He'll make my life better. I almost said wife better, but boy, hope she's not watching today. She's sick. I want something from God, and then I'm willing to believe Him, and so it's kind of like a transactional faith. When really what we need to have is a relational faith, a faith that looks to just be right with God, a faith that looks to get to know Jesus, a faith that just wants to stay close and to have that relationship with Jesus in our life, regardless of how easy life is, regardless of how good it seems. At the moment, if we just have a relationship with Jesus, whether we get something out of it or not, we just want to know Him. See, there's a difference between a transactional faith where I just want God to give me what I want, and then that faith that says, I just want to follow Jesus and be His. I want to talk about that, how important that is, because I think it's incredibly important that we have a kind of faith that's just all about getting to know Jesus. Sometimes we can get in a rut, even in a relationship, where it starts to become just too much about us. Too much about us. See, when we get into a relationship, sometimes it starts off well. We're always thinking about the other person. When we started dating our spouse, at the beginning, we were thinking of the other person. We tried to look good because we wanted to look good for them. We wanted them to like how we looked, so we cared about the stuff that we wore. We tried to do our hair in just the right way. We washed our car. We tried to do all kinds of things to look. We didn't want to look bad. We didn't want to look silly. We wanted to look good. And then we thought about things that we could do for them that they would like, that would impress them, because that's how a dating dating relationship starts. We're going to go out on a date. We're going to go to a restaurant. Well, where do you want to go? Well, you want to go someplace that she'll like, or you want to go someplace that he'll like. You care about the other person, and so you're trying to think of them. And that's kind of how a really great relationship starts. And then somewhere along the way, when relationships start to struggle, somewhere along the way, things have changed. Instead of saying, what can I do for that person? We start to ask, why haven't they done such and such for me? And we start to look at a relationship as, am I getting what I want out of it? And it switches, and it struggles. What if, instead of just trying to get something from God, we were just trying to be right with Him today and tomorrow? What if we were like that good thief who said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom? He didn't ask for much there. He just wanted to be right. He was looking to Jesus to believe in Him, not really to get something from Him. He was humble about it. What sort of faith are we practicing? I know we would all say, well, we want to have a relationship with Jesus, and that's true. We all know the right answer. But what sort of relationship are we practicing in our life? Is it a transactional faith, or is it a relational faith? I can tell you that relational faith, if you're going after that relationship with Jesus, it's going to give your life real meaning no matter what you're going through. It's going to give your life. If Jesus had come off the cross and saved those two criminals, by the way, if he'd have come off the cross and saved them, you know what would have happened to both of them? Later, they'd have died later. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the grave, really great story. Jesus raises Lazarus from the grave, stands outside. The guy's been dead for 4 days. And he says, Lazarus, come out. He came out. He was all wrapped up in his grave clothes still. And it was a miracle. It was fantastic. You know what happened to Lazarus later? Died again. Now, he probably wasn't scared of it the second time. You know? He probably wasn't. You know, if he would have been right there in the hospital next to somebody in bed number 2, probably could have looked at him, smiled, and said, first time. You know, he probably could have done that. But he's still gonna live temporarily, because that's sort of just this world, right? That's this world. We're all living here temporarily. And the truth is, there really wasn't hardly any difference between the thieves, or the criminals, the guys on the cross, and everybody standing around the crosses. The only real difference is the guys on the cross knew their time was about up, and the guys that are standing around it, they still had a little bit more time, they thought, maybe. But every one of us is sort of still in the same situation. We've got a life, and it's temporary. And so we can hold on to the things of this life, and we can try to get things from God in this life, but none of the stuff here is permanent. Even if God blesses us, even if God gives us the answer to prayer, everything's kind of temporary. And it becomes easy to think, when we come face to face with that, it becomes easy to think that maybe none of it matters. That there's no meaning to our life. That it doesn't matter what we do. I mean, the Bible even talks about this. In the book of Ecclesiastes, says something that's it's depressing. He says, there's no remembrance of those who came before. And of those who will come after, there will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. Life just goes on. We forget what happened in the past. Who was your great-great-grandfather? Most of us in here are not even sure what their name is anymore. My great, we start going backwards. It doesn't take you very many generations, so you're like, well, who was his dad? And we have no idea. We've forgotten his name. We've forgotten what they were like. We don't know how tall they were. We don't know the kinds of things that made them mad. We don't know the things that they went through. We're not really sure if they graduated high school or not. We have no idea what they were doing, unless some of us in here might have some famous person in our life. We might have gone back very far, but most of the time, we forget pretty fast. In fact, in the world, we we've forgotten entire civilizations. Every now and then we dig something up and we're like, what in the world is this? And we find out there was a whole city in this place. There was a whole civilization, and nobody remembers it anymore. We've got stuff in South America where we got all these ruins, and we're not really sure what in the world those people were up to, but there was evidently some people there at one time or another. There's so much stuff that has happened that everybody's just forgotten. It's really easy to think that none of it really matters. And if my faith is just about this world, if my faith is just about this temporary stuff, well, this temporary stuff, it's not just temporary, it's forgettable. But if I look to Jesus, and if I have a relationship with God, and if I have a relationship with God through Christ, and that He knows me and that I'm following Him, well, then everything that I do in this temporary world matters, because I'm doing it for Him. Because I'm doing it with Him. And all of a sudden that starts to give meaning. Even though the world might forget what you are going through, even though the world might forget all the ups and downs in your life, even though the world might never take notice of us unfamous people and only pay attention to the really famous ones, even if that's the way the world is, what you do does matter, because God can work in your life, and He can work through your life, and God can make this world better. And maybe the world will never notice, but God notices. He notices the difference you made. He notices the love that you leave behind. He notices the good things that you did as you worshiped Him with your life and as you followed Him. If you have a relationship with Jesus, then your life matters. It gives meaning to your life. Cheryl and I went over to the Bass Pro thing yesterday. She had her birthday, and her birthday present was she got to swim with the sharks. And so she got to put on the big helmet, the 75-pound helmet that's only 15 pounds when you're in the water. And and they pump the air, and she got to go down in the cage and just film all the fish and the sharks that go by. And we had a great time that we went through the whole deal. And we had to watch a video from Johnny Morris, the guy who built and owns Bass Pro, and he's talking about his life, and he's talking about taking his kids fishing and going fishing when he was a kid with his family. And he says that everybody should go fishing with their kids. I kind of agree. I think fishing's great. But it doesn't have to be fishing. If you did something else besides fishing with your kids, or if you just don't enjoy fishing, that's totally okay. My family is not so much into fishing. I like it, but the kids, not so much. I was trying to talk Daniel into it yesterday after watching the video, and he just looks at me and he goes, "No." And so we have this great big argument. Some of you know Daniel. You know the look on his face that I'm talking about. And we had a great time, but fishing's not really been our family thing. Our family thing has been going to movies and going to plays and things like that together as a family. We're just into that. We'll watch one at home, but we really like to just go to the theater together. And we're doing that this week. The family's getting together and we're just all going. That's sort of our thing. We have a great time doing that. But you don't have to go fishing. You don't have to go to a movie theater. You don't have to go to some play. You don't have to. Whatever you do, what really makes a difference is that you do something in the context of your family. You do something together. And it won't be the thing that made the difference. It would just be the relationship that you have with your family that makes all the difference in the world, and it makes the world better. Makes your world better. Puts joy and beauty into this world because your family loves each other and has fun together and does life together. And let me tell you, when you have a relationship with Jesus and you do life with Jesus and you go through life with God, it makes your world better. It makes the world better. It makes a difference. It gives your life meaning. If you have a relationship with Jesus, if that's the kind of thing your faith is like, it's a relational faith that's going to give meaning. And if you have a relational faith, it's also going to give you strength in the present. It'll give you strength in the present. I always pictured the bad criminal as angry. Maybe bitter. That's kind of how I always pictured him. You know, when he said that, he said, "Hey, aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." I just kind of picture him saying that in sort of a bitter, kind of an angry way. I've seen people play that part in movies and in plays, and that's how they usually do it too. They're angry about it, bitter about it. Life hasn't really treated him well. He's ended up in a bad spot. And so he's angry at Jesus. One of the reasons I'm not ever really been comfortable with a popular teaching, you hear it all the time, it's really popular. I've never really been 100% comfortable with this. People talk about and teach that it's okay to be angry with God. And I know we are sometimes angry with God. And I really do agree. I think God understands when people are angry with Him. But I think sometimes when we teach it, it sort of gives the impression that we're encouraging people to be angry at God if you're mad about something. It just sort of gives the impression sometimes to me, it comes across as saying, you know, you should be angry at God if things don't go your way. If life gets really tough. If things go wrong. If you don't get that answer to prayer. If you don't really get what you'd like to have. It's almost saying, hey, have a transactional faith. If God doesn't give you what you want, you should be upset. You should file a complaint. You should become Karen. You should talk to the manager. I don't mean a real Karen. It's an internet thing. You'll have to ask me later. But some of you guys who are online, you know exactly what I mean. I don't mean an actual Karen. But our present circumstances can be tough. And the religious leaders mocked Jesus, and they thought he was a loser because things weren't going well for Jesus. It says in Matthew chapter 27, verse 42 and 43, this is what the religious leaders said. He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross and we'll believe in him. Transactional faith. Hey, if he comes off the cross, if he proves it, then we'll believe him. Then we'll believe him. Verse 43, he trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he takes pleasure in him. For he said, I'm the Son of God. If he's really who he said he was, then God wouldn't let anything bad happen to him. If he's really who he said he was, God wouldn't let him go to the cross like this. It's ridiculous. You can tell that he's not real because God is letting him be crucified. Their faith was transactional. They thought Jesus' faith should be transactional. Look, didn't get you anywhere, did it? You're going to the cross. How can God use tough circumstances if we aren't willing to go through tough circumstances? How can He teach us or prepare us for what He wants us to do if we're not willing to have anything become uncomfortable or difficult? How in the world can God use us to do something incredibly epic like God was using Jesus to do if we're not willing to go through suffering? Jesus went through suffering, and aren't we glad? It makes the biggest difference for us today because He was willing to go through that. The apostles who believed in Jesus, almost every one of them were persecuted and were killed for their faith in Jesus. And because they went through so much, it's a lot easier for us today to believe. Because we look at their life and we think no one would ever go through that if they knew it wasn't true. We can look at their life, they must have believed it because look at how much they went through. Their lives are a testimony. How could their lives be that testimony if they weren't willing to go through that sort of thing? If they weren't willing to suffer? There's a time in the Old Testament when the Israelites got defeated and they got deported. And they were getting deported by the nation of Babylon. And Babylon was kicking them out, because when you kick people out of their land, they're less likely to start an insurgency. So that's what an ancient army would do. They would defeat you, and then they'd ship you out of there. So you'd be in some strange place, and you're less likely to rebel if you're over there. So they're shipping the Israelites out. They're taking the best of them with them, because they're going to use the best people, the smartest minds. They're going to use them, but they're kicking them out of their land, taking them back to Babylon. And there's a couple of prophets in the Old Testament at that time. And one of those prophets is saying, hey, look, God's going to bring you back within 2 years. He's going to wipe Babylon out. He was telling them what they wanted to hear. He was telling them that God was going to take care of them. They weren't going to have to suffer very long at all. And then there was Jeremiah. And Jeremiah said, God's not saying that. Here's what Jeremiah told them. Jeremiah told them, this is what the Lord of armies, the God of Israel, says to all the exiles that deported from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Find wives for yourselves and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters to men in marriage, so that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there, do not decrease. He says, pursue the well-being of the city I have deported you to. Try to work for good of the place where you're at. Pray to the Lord on its behalf, for when it thrives, you will thrive. He told them, you're going to be there for a while. You're going to have a lot of your life take place when you're not anywhere near. God's not going to solve this problem. He's not going to destroy Babylon. This is going to last for a while. Live your life. Work for the good of the place that you're at. Where they were going wasn't home. It wasn't where they wanted to be. It wasn't permanent. But it was going to be a place they were going to be at for a while. It wasn't ideal, and it wasn't going to be easy. But God says, while you're there, be good citizens. While you're there, raise your family. While you're there, do life. Even though it's not home. And they might be there, and they might say, but this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not the promised land. This is not what God has for me. So why does it matter what I do here? It matters because regardless of your circumstances, if you have a relationship with God, if you have a relationship with Jesus, whether you're going through difficult times right now or whether you're going through easy times right now, you can follow Jesus. And in His time and according to His plan, and when He's ready, He'll change those circumstances. But you, right now, in the middle of whatever it is, you follow Jesus. And when we have a faith that follows Him, no matter what our circumstances are, when we have a faith that just wants to have a relationship with God and a relationship with Jesus, no matter what we're going through, then we can handle the tough times. We can get through those kinds of things. It gives us strength when we have a relationship with Jesus. And it doesn't just do that, it also transforms. The guy on the cross, the bad criminal, looks at Jesus and he says, save yourself and us. And if we could just go back in time, if we could just invent that time machine, go back in time and be right there, you know what we could tell him? He looks at Jesus and he says, if you're really the Messiah, save yourself and us. You know what we really could tell him? We could look at him and we could go, my dude, it's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what He's doing. He is saving you. He is saving, and not just you. He's saving the whole world. Everyone who's ever existed. Everyone who will ever be born. He's doing it all. Because of His relationship with God as the Son of God, He's willing to go to the cross. Because of His relationship with God as the Son of God, He's willing to pay the price for every person who's ever been born or ever will be born. It's exactly what He's doing. He's saving you right now. And when we have a faith in Jesus, it transforms our life, but it also transforms the world. And it doesn't always feel like much is happening. And I would think that if you're that criminal on the cross and you're looking at Jesus, it just doesn't seem like a whole lot is happening. But what he didn't realize was that this guy on the cross next to him, the fact that he was dying on that cross and that 3 days later he's going to rise again, it's going to change the course of human history. The world's never going to be the same because of what Jesus was doing, because he had a relationship with his Father, and because people later can have a relationship with God through Jesus. And right there, the most was happening. It didn't seem like that much to the criminal on the cross who looked at him. But God was doing everything. And it might not seem like that much when you're serving God in your family, when you're serving God in your home, when you're serving God at school, when you're serving God at work, when you're just trying to follow Jesus in all the little moments in your life. It might not seem like that much, but how many of us in this room have a friend or have a parent or have a grandparent or know somebody in our life who has this incredible relationship with Jesus, and they've inspired us? We like being around that person. They've made our family better. They've made our workplace better. They've made just our life better because they've been that friend because of their relationship with Jesus. It may not seem like that much, but God's going to take your relationship with Jesus and He will make your life and the world around you better. Better. So today, I just want to invite you to do something, and that is this. Seek to have a relationship with Jesus. Follow Him, not because of what you can get from following Jesus, but follow Jesus because you believe in Him, because you trust in Him. Let your faith be part of your day tomorrow. Let your faith in Jesus be part of the moments that you have this evening and tonight and this week. Let your faith in Jesus be part of who you are and be part of your life. Let Him give your life meaning. Let Him give you strength, and let Him transform everything.